Welcome to this 88K model railroad video, and today we are going to install an access point on the Raspberry Pi Zero W. Now there are two versions of this Raspberry Pi Zero. You've got the basic standard model, and then you have the W. The W stands for the Wi-Fi component or module that's placed on the board itself. Now, the reason that I'm using this, or the reason I'm putting this video out, is several months ago I was building the wiki demo plan, and I had to put that on hold. I had other things to do, and now I'm bringing it back. And I started last week on developing and building the module. Now I came to a point where I had issues with the EPS32s accessing my router, and I had an old router that I was using, and it would never connect. And I found out that the drivers on that router was outdated, and versus what the ESP32s use. So I was on the verge of buying a brand new router, but then thought maybe I'll use the Raspberry Pi Zeros that I have, because I've got maybe 9 or 10 of them. So I thought I would utilize it, and I started to install the access point. Now, what was going to be a short little project ended up being a couple of days long, because I had problems installing and getting it up and running. But I finally got it up and running, and now I thought if I had the problem, then others may have the problem as well. So then I'd create a video to show you how to create or how to install the access point on the Raspberry Pi Zero. So that's what we are, or that's where we are now. And if you look here, I've got my Raspberry Pi, and then I've got a couple other cables that I use, auxiliary cables that I use in this configuration. I've got an Ethernet USB adapter, then I've got the dongle for the keyboard, and then the adapter for the HDMI cable. So that's what you see here. Now, the bulk of this video is going to be the installation process, and that's what we're going to go through. We're going to install the AP software. We're going to do a static IP assignment, and that ends up establishing our IP address. And what we're going to do is we're going to use 192.168-10 dot 1. That's going to be our network that we set up. Then we're going to set up the DHCP server. That's the dynamic host configuration protocol. And what that does is allocates all your IP addresses for any of the users that will access. Then we're going to put up the host APD. That's the bulk of the server that serves the Wi-Fi connection. Then we're going to check the AP software to make sure, and we're going to step by step, we're going to initiate these commands to verify each one of our steps that everything's okay. Then we're going to wrap things up with the access, or test the AP access, and we're going to just use a phone to make the connection and to ensure that the AP is up and running. So let's get started. Okay, real quick, we're going to look at the terminal connections. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the installation of the operating system, the SD cards, and all that configuration. There are other videos that show that. But I do want to go through each one of the steps, and this video is going to be somewhat long, but I think it's more so warranted, because some of the videos that I watched with on YouTube concerning the access point, you could see they condensed the videos down, and they inadvertently left out some key points that was critical to establishing the access point on the video on the Raspberry Pi W. So what I want to do is, although it's going to be long and kind of drawn out, it's going to hit each one of the steps, and we're actually going to run into a problem and then resolve that. So kind of hang in there. It is long, but I think it's important to cover each aspect, because if you miss one step in this or whenever dealing with the Raspberry Pi, one step can actually prohibit you from getting the installation or getting whatever service in the Raspberry Pi up and functioning. And you could sometimes spend one day or a week trying to find or hunt down these issues. So let's just continue on. And what we're going to talk about now is a terminal connection, and kind of quickly go over that and then jump into the meat of it. The terminal connection, what we're going to do is use what's called SSH, and that's secure shell. And what that does is creates an interface that will send out commands to the connected device. And what we're connected to is the Raspberry Pi Zero, and we're going to use the software that's called PuTTY. Now, PuTTY is an open source project that allows you to download the program. You don't have to register or anything like that. You can install and run, and that's what we're going to use to communicate with the Raspberry Pi. It's kind of a simple connection. You just connect your computer to the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi then goes into your router and then accesses the internet, and will initiate commands that will have the Raspberry Pi to retrieve some of the software packages needed to create the access point. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the terminal access, the PuTTY, and then start loading the software. Okay, here we are at the computer. I've got my router screen up, and you can see that the client, one of the client is the Raspberry Pi, and we see that the IP address is the 192.168.8 and the 213. So we know that it's up. The Raspberry Pi is up and connected to my router. We can use that information and put it into the PuTTY. Here's PuTTY. What you do is you put the IP address, and it accesses the port 222, which is the SSH port. So if we click open, you see that it shows the login, and now it's asking for the user, and we put the user as admin, and the password is 1 through 8. Okay, so now we're in. Let's look at our procedure. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install the software. So remember, the router is, or the Raspberry Pi is connected to the router, and the router is now connected to the internet. So it has internet access. So what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling in the access port software. And we can initiate the command, which is sudo apt. Sudo is super user do, and apt is advanced packet tool. And this is what the Linux type OS, that's how it kind of communicates and pulls information in its whole command structure, but we don't need to go into that. So let's pull in the first command, or enter the first command, which is sudo apt install, and we're going to install the DNSMASQ and the Hostapd. So let's enter that, and now you can see that the Pi is gone out and hit the site. It may be GitHub, I think, and it's just pulling the files in. Or actually, no, it's the raspberry.org FTP site. So this is going to take a couple of minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and that way you don't have to sit here and wait, and then I'll start up when it finishes. Okay, it completed its install. We see that there's no failure here anywhere in the listing. So we have the host ADP, which is the host ADP. What it actually stands for is the host access point daemon, and the daemon is like the little program that runs in the background. So with those installed, what we're going to do is shut them down as we continue, as we do the install, and then we'll start bringing them back as we complete the installation. So the first one here, we're going to go sudo superuser do. We're going to go to the system control, and we're going to stop the DNSMASQ. And then we're going to go in and stop the host access port daemon. Okay, so now both of those are stopped. Our next step, we're going to go in and we're going to set up the static IP address for WAN 0, and this is what's going to dictate our IP network address. So we're going to go into the DHCP and this is the first configuration file that we're going to start to update. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can input the interface information, the IP address for that interface. That's here. Now this is something that you have to watch out for. When you copy and paste into these files, sometimes you can copy and paste the DOS line feeds, and whenever the DOS line feeds get into the inputs or the list, then it could create problems for the daemon, because the daemon may not understand the line feed and it won't complete the load, and you'll never know. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete out everything here up to the static, hit enter, and then we're going to tab it. And that way we know for sure there's no inadvertent line feeds or anything that's in the list. So this took too much out. The end, we're going to hit enter and then do the tab. Now we're going to do Control X, which gets us out. We're going to save, yes, and then hit enter. So we've got the first config file completed. So we're going to continue on. We're going to activate or restart the DHCP. So whenever we do the restart, what it ends up doing is rereading the configuration file. So you have to make sure that you do that. Sometimes you forget to restart it, and then it doesn't actually go back and reread the file, and it ends up not doing what you expect, and then you get into a big old troubleshooting loop. So let's do a status real quick, and we can go here, recall that, and then do status. Okay, so now with the status, you see that it's active and running, and then there's no errors here. We can see that it's loaded everything. Now the LAN 0 is now waiting for the carrier. And then we've got the Ethernet, and it shows that there's no IPv6, which we haven't set up anyway. So after completing this, what we're going to do is do a reboot, and that way we make sure that everything gets started again. Super user do, and then reboot. So now that reboot is going to cause our connection to go down. So we'll just say OK, and then we'll wait for it to reestablish itself, and then we'll use PuTTY to reconnect. Now, here we're putting in the DHCP server, and there is another, I think there's two DHCP servers, and I think in one of the tutorials it said to shut it down, but I think if you shut it down, you invert it, shut the whole thing down, and then DNSMASQ I think uses portion of the DNS or the DHCP CD. So here what we're going to do is we're going to start up, the next step is to start up the DNSMASQ configuration. So let's look and see if the Pi is back up. Yes, you see the Pi is back up, and now it's asking for the admin or the user ID and the password. Okay, there we are. We're back in. So what I'm going to do is do clear the screen up. Then we will start from the top. We're going to go in and configure the DNSMASQ. And in some of the tutorials, once again, it tells you to delete everything out, then install and place the parameters that you want. But I find once again you can get into that problem where you copy and paste a DOS file, or not the DOS file but the text, and it puts in the carriage return and line feed, and the line feed is what the daemon doesn't understand. So what we're going to do is kind of sidestep that. We'll leave the configuration file as it's built here, and we're just going to edit in what we need. So you can do what's called a search with Control W, and we're going to enter the first line here, which we're going to try to find the interface line entry, and then uncomment it, and then add the WAN to it. So here we put in the hash and then the interface, and we hit enter. And there you can see it found it. So we'll delete this out. Then the text is now highlighted in white, and now we'll convert it, or not convert it, but we'll enter the value, which is the WAN 0. The next line entry that we want to do is the DHCP range. So we can do the same thing, Control W, the hashtag DHCP-range, hit enter, and there we found it. Now this is something you have to note, and once again it's something that the other tutorial said, and it seemed to be a little off. Here you've got DHCP range, you've got 192.168.0.50, and then the beginning, and then the end, which is the 150 here. So it's addresses 50 through 150, and then this 12 at the end is the number of hours that the lease will expire, and we're going to change that to 24. But we want to go down to the next entry, which is still the range, but what it has is the DNS, or not the DNS, but the subnet mask, which is the 25.25.25.0. So let's go in and change this, and remember our IP address that we want for our network was going to be 10, so 192.168.10, and we're going to start off at 5. and go all the way up to 50. So we enter that 10 and then 150. And then we go to the end here and we change the 12 hours to 24 hours for the least time parameter. Okay, with that in, we're going to enter the information. So we do Control X. Then it says, do you want to save it? We say yes, hit enter, and then now we're out. So we've got the DHCP server, the DNSMASQ set up and configured. And what we're going to do next is go and do the system control, and then we're going to start the DNSMASQ up again. But let's enter here and let's pull everything out and then restart it. So we're going to go super user do and system control ctl, and then what we're going to do is disable the DNSMASQ, and then we're going to come in and then we're going to enable it again, and then we're going to start it. Super user do system control and enable DNSMASQ. So here we go, we disable it. Then we're going to go super user do system control, and we're going to enable DNSMASQ. So we'll let this run, and as soon as it enables it, then we're going to go in and start it up. Okay, so it started, and now let's do a status to see how things are. Okay, so now it shows that there's no servers that are found. So let's exit out here. Let's see if we can restart it here. Okay, so now it's showing that the interface doesn't exist, which is okay. Let's see, control here, let's get out and let's continue on, and then we'll come back to check that error. So we're going to go in, and now we're going to start up the host access port daemon. So, or are we actually going to configure it? Here, yes. So we've got the configuration file, it's blank, and we're going to populate it with the information. Now remember, I said I had issues with the ESP32 accessing my router, and I think it stemmed that my router could not or did not have the 11G, which is a different iteration of the IEEE 802. and I think it only had B. So here we're going to configure it with G, and then channel 7. Here's the interface WAN 0. This is the driver, which is that IEEE 811, and then here's our ID. What we're going to do and change the SSID, we're going to change it to 88K. And then the pi 0. Here is the mode channel enable. Then we've got our passphrase, which is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So let's copy this. And you see here, I can see that there's no carriage returned or anything like that. So I think we'll be okay. Here, Control X, save, yes, and then exit. So now that we have the Hostapd configured, now we want to update the directory so the Damien can find, or not update the directory, but update the file pointer, and that way the Damien can find and know where to find the Hostapd. So we can go in and let's copy here. We're doing the super do and then the nano, which is the editor program. Now we're in this file here. Let's pull out the comments, and we want to get this here, this directory. So let's copy it, paste it there, say Control X, save it, yes, and now we're out. So we've got the Damien update, the pointer. Now let's start up the Hostapd. So we're going to first unmask it. Then we're going to enable it. And let's start it. So now we see that it started, and now let's do the check and let's see the status. And you see here after the status, you see that it's active and running. And let's go back and check the DNSMASQ. There it shows that the interface is still down. Let's go back and let's bounce it once more. So we're going to go superuser do system control, and let's disable, or no, let's stop the DNSMASQ. We're going to disable it. And now enable it. and then start it. And let's do a status. There. So now you see it's active running, and then we have no errors. So it made the assignment. So that's why you want to make sure that you stop and start these services up. And it takes it rereading the information before it establishes itself. So we were doing the checks, and we see that the WAN was down and that it didn't exist. But as we started to build the host APD, it started to do the configuration, and then once it was in, we restarted everything, and now we're up and good. So let's continue on. Now we're going to add the routing. So we're going to go into the system control config file. Let's Control C out. Enter. Now what we need to do is uncomment the net IPv4 IP forward. So that's IPv6 forward. And I passed it. It's up here. It's right here. So here's the net IPv4.IP underscore forward equals 1. So that's now configured. So we can go Control X, yes to save, enter, we're out. Next is the outbound traffic we're going to set up, and this is for the Ethernet. And in this case, it doesn't matter. We're not really going to use it, but we'll put it there just in case. So there it started. Now this is we entered the post routing. Now copy, and we're going to now save the rules. Then we're going to update the local here, and we're going to scroll down, and right above the X0 we're going to enter this. Here. X, yes, save, enter. Okay, so this is the last piece here. What we're going to do is super user do, and then we're going to reboot it. Okay, so now it's going down, and we're going to let it reboot and reestablish itself. Then after that, what I'm going to do is take my phone and query and try to log into the 88K Pi 0 network. So let's see. We'll give it some time to reboot. And now as we speak, I'm going into my phone to see and do a scan to see if it pops up. Okay, it popped up, so that means it should be up again. What we can do is go back into PuTTY and restart the session. Here it goes, log in. Let's do admin, then the password. Okay, so now we're in. Clear screen here, and what I'm going to do is log in. Okay, so now I've logged in. I'm in 88K Pi 0, and now we've got our access port is up and running. So hopefully you guys can use this if you will follow along and you're going to build your wiki demo plan or a facsimile of it. If you want to set up your very own IP or AP access point, you can use the Raspberry Pi to do that. And instead of spending money, if you already have the Pi, you can use it. This can help you configure it. You can use the same procedure to do one of the Pi 3s that you have, or 4. One thing that I have to mention is I use the OS is the light OS without a head. And the head is the keyboard and the display and all of that, and you don't want to waste resources, processing resources with the Raspberry Pi trying to handle your screen and display and all of that. So get the light version. This is the light Bullseye. So hopefully this helps you guys. It's kind of a long video, but I think we need to cover each individual steps so you can see what's going to happen, or what's happening and what's going to happen. And remember, when we went back and we saw where the WAN wasn't established, and as we continued on with the process, then we filled the configuration files that allowed the WAN to get established, and then we can go on. So that's why I said it's important to kind of cover each one of the steps, and that if you try to cut out some of the steps for the sake of the video and the time, you can omit a step that will cause whomever following along a lot of heartache and lost time in trying to troubleshoot and find an issue that wasn't really there. So in any case, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, like, subscribe, and we'll see you later. And remember, in the next couple of days you'll see the wiki demo video come out, and I'll have all of the components and everything established. When I say components, meaning the sensors and all of that, and each one of those sensors and that whole board is all home brewed. Even the controls from the switch is all done by components that I've got here and put together, which that ends up omitting a lot of other devices that you have to buy if you don't want to. So in any case, we'll talk to you later. Bye.